Surprise, surprise, it's a client of ours. I'm the one handling your company's account. You should be grateful you can make a living thanks to me. Time to thank me. That's what my old classmate, Jack, said with a laugh when he heard where I work. We had reconnected at a middle school reunion, and it seems like after graduating from Harvard, Jack's been working at a major real estate company. His entourage found it hilarious, chiming in with "no way," while Jack himself seemed quite pleased, laughing heartily. In that moment, I felt my patience snap. I immediately shrugged off his hand with all my might, and, with a beaming smile, I told Jack, "Oh, is that so? Well then, let's call off our business deal." I decided then to expose all the information I had and bring him down. My name is George. I'm 42 years old, working at a company that develops and supports apps used by other businesses. Our company's unique selling point is our ability to create customized apps. We handle everything from development to support, tailoring functionalities to each company's needs. We're popular among businesses wanting apps customized for their specific requirements, and we do make a decent profit. Now, I find great satisfaction in my work, but originally, I wasn't interested in app development. Due to family circumstances, I had to start working immediately after graduating middle school, so I didn't have the luxury of choosing a job based on what I wanted to do. Back then, my choices were based solely on salary and benefits, and I sought positions that didn't require a high school diploma. My current company, a kind of startup, was looking for a wide range of talents and didn't focus on educational background. What caught my eye, though, was the flexibility in taking time off. I applied right away, though it seems they weren't expecting a middle school graduate to show up. The interviewer was a bit perplexed, but the company president, who happened to be there, decided to hire me, thinking I'd learn quickly since I had less formal education. The reason I had to work right out of middle school was my father fell. My mother had passed away from illness before I even started elementary school. After that, my father threw himself into his work, as if to escape the pain. But the loss of his beloved wife took its toll. In my second year of middle school, he collapsed, having reached his limit. Seeing this, I resolved to work and support us both. He wasn't in life-threatening condition, but there were days he needed care. That's why being able to take time off was so crucial for me. Over 20 years have passed since then, and recently, Dad's health has been more stable. So, I've been dedicating myself to my job, wanting to repay the company that took a chance on a middle school graduate like me. Then one day, I got an invite to a middle school class reunion. Dad, who's always seen me buried in work, suggested I go. But I was feeling a bit conflicted. It was because of this guy, Jack, who was a classmate back then. Jack, the son of a wealthy family, lived in the biggest house in town and was dead set on becoming a wealthy elite himself. He was the kind of guy who had to be the best at everything, whether it was sports or studies, and I remember him being quite a handful. Back in the day, I was pretty smart and enjoyed studying, so I often scored higher than Jack on tests. Despite his obsession with being the best, Jack seemed to hate studying, as I hardly ever saw him hit the books outside of class. As a result, he resented losing to me and started to bully me. For instance, I used to make my own lunches because my mom wasn't around, and Jack would loudly comment in front of the whole class about how pitiful and poorly colored they were. Then he'd go further, saying it was sad that I had no mom and that my dad didn't care about me. But I didn't think he was worth the trouble, so I just ignored him back then. I knew I was valued by my dad, and though I was annoyed about the lunch comments, I had to admit they didn't look that great. I didn't want to meet Jack, but I was curious about what my old friends were up to. I felt it would be a waste to miss out just because of him, so I decided to go. The reunion was like a casual standing party, where everyone chatted with friends wherever they pleased. I had wondered if I would be able to recognize anyone by face. Surprisingly, everyone still retained their familiar looks, and I was able to quickly reunite with my old friend Mike, with whom I had been close back then. We never ran out of things to talk about, and within 5 minutes, it was like we were back in middle school. Amidst the fun, one person stood out in the center of the room. It was, of course, Jack, looking every bit the elite from a comic book, in a clearly branded suit and a gold luxury watch. He seemed very pleased with his life and career. When asked about his job or family, he'd answer loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. That's how I learned he graduated from Harvard, works at a major real estate company, has a wife and daughter, and his suit cost over $10,000. Many tried to get close to wealthy Jack in middle school, hoping for benefits, and he was surrounded by classmates acting like his entourage today, too. Mike and I, never fans of such crowds, chatted away in a corner, hoping to avoid Jack. Suddenly, Jack raised his voice. "By the way, where's George?" Too ashamed to show up at the reunion, being a middle school graduate and all. His voice dripped with mockery, and both Mike and I cringed. I hoped to go unnoticed, but with only about 20 people, it was inevitable. His followers quickly spotted us and pointed. Jack approached us with a condescending smile, still basking in the flattery from his group. Mike and I turned to face him as Jack arrived. To think, a middle school graduate George and his friend Mike managed to show up. Jack, who had approached us, scrutinized my outfit while laughing. Mike, seemingly exasperated, quietly observed us while fiddling with his cell phone. In Jack's mind, a middle school graduate equaled being unemployed, it seemed. Sure, someone who graduated from Harvard and worked at a major real estate company probably didn't encounter many middle school graduates. So I thought, maybe his perspective is limited, and reluctantly replied, "I'm not unemployed. I work just like anyone else." At my words, Jack struck a pose of surprise. His followers laughed uproariously, and I couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. Surprised? A company actually hired someone like you. Name it, I bet it's just some small business, Jack taunted. Then, he proudly mentioned the name of the company he worked for. Indeed, Jack's company was a well-known, top-tier real estate firm. This was evident from his appearance, which suggested he was well compensated. I named my workplace while feeling disgusted at his arrogance. Jack's eyes widened, then he burst into a vulgar laugh. "Surprise! You work for one of our clients," he exclaimed. "I handle your company's account. You owe your livelihood to me, so thank me." Suddenly, Jack grabbed my head. I never expected him to resort to physical force, and I was shocked as I tried to pry his hand off. His followers were laughing, saying no way, and Jack seemed to be in a good mood, laughing along. That's when I heard my patience snap. I swiftly shrugged off his hand, smiled broadly, and told Jack, "Oh really? Then let's call off the deal." Jack froze, mouth agape, seemingly confused by my sudden change in demeanor or my words. What are you talking about? You can't have any say in the dealings, can you?" Jack clearly thought I had no involvement in his company's dealings. So, with a sigh, I began to explain about the business transactions. Dealing with your company's representative is always a hassle. It's a hot topic at our company. You always look down on us, keep changing your demands, and refuse to pay extra fees. Actually, I am at the core of app development for Jack's company, and also the project manager with the authority to continue or terminate deals. Originally, I was just a manager, but due to the poor attitude of Jack's company, the president told me I could stop negotiations if there were no improvements. Jack, the representative, always acted like he was doing us a favor by using our app, looking down on our company. He demanded additions of new features free of charge, and even after we added features he requested, he would change his mind, saying he didn't need them after all. Such selfish behavior. As I shared this, Jack's face turned pale. Still, he seemed not to grasp the situation fully. Jack glared at me and, trying to mask his unease, raised his voice. So what? If you stop dealing with a company as big as ours, it's you who'll be in trouble. True to form, Jack, oblivious to his position, prompted me to inform him of the reality with a chuckle. Really, if this deal gets terminated, I think it's you who will be in trouble. If you can't use our app anymore, you'll have to change your entire real estate management system. That would certainly jeopardize your position, wouldn't it? Seemingly struck by realization, Jack's eyes darted back and forth. The app his company uses was specially developed by ours. Given that they're a major firm with many properties to manage, our app was the solution to their problem of managing with existing apps and services. However, if our deal ends, Jack's company won't be able to continue using our app. If the company as a whole decides to do so, it might not be a problem, but if it's due to Jack's attitude, it would be a significant issue. Jack would have to take responsibility. Finally grasping the gravity of the situation, Jack still couldn't believe what he had done. "Shut up, there's no way you could do that, you're just bluffing," he shouted and suddenly pushed me on the shoulder. Being shoved by a grown man, I couldn't resist immediately and stumbled to the floor. This finally brought his followers to their senses. "Hey, that might be going too far. Yay, what if he had gotten hurt?" His now sober entourage began whispering among themselves, and Jack finally lost all his supporters. His face growing even paler, Jack trembled, not knowing what to do with the hand he had used to shove me. Fortunately, I wasn't hurt and quickly stood up, ready to speak. "After what you've done, I can't stay silent anymore." Jack braced himself but didn't stop his pretense. "What can you possibly do?" he asked, his voice quivering. My next words seemed to completely unsettle Jack. "You're in a pretty bad position at your company, aren't you? Tyler is your boss, right?" As I mentioned his boss's name, Jack's eyes widened. "Tyler is a regular at my favorite bar and a somewhat close friend. We became friends after sharing a table on a busy day, and later I discovered he was Jack's direct superior. In other words, I was already familiar with the company Jack works for. Although I wasn't in sales, so I didn't know Jack was our contact, I had heard various complaints about him from Tyler. Jack, proud of his Harvard degree, often ignored work explanations and made frequent mistakes. His attitude was disliked in the office, causing discord, yet he insisted he was an elite and not at fault. Moreover, despite having a wife and child, he had been seen inviting young female colleagues to dinner and making inappropriate physical contact, which troubled Tyler. As I revealed these stories, the next person to shout wasn't Jack. "What do you mean by that?" The person who shouted was Jack's wife, a woman named Emily. Actually, Jack's wife was a middle school classmate of mine, and she was also attending today's reunion. Jack was at a loss, flustered by his wife's angry yelling. "You said things were going well at work and that's why you came home late, but to think," his wife yelled hysterically, almost lunging at him. Jack, angered by his wife's reaction, replied loudly. "Do you really believe what this middle school graduate is saying?" Jack exclaimed. However, it seemed his wife had her own side of the story, and their argument escalated quickly. Apparently, Jack hadn't been showing his wife his paycheck, and hadn't been contributing much to the household finances. His wife harbored suspicions, and today's revelations seemed to have been the last straw. From what Tyler said, Jack's company is quite a respectable firm. His late arrivals at home were probably not due to work, but rather, spending time with other women. And if he showed his paycheck, the lack of overtime pay would reveal that he wasn't working late. He probably hadn't shared his paycheck to avoid being exposed, but it seemed to have backfired. As his wife loudly demanded an explanation, Jack desperately tried to make excuses. Amidst the chaos, I made a call to my company. Even though it was a holiday, I figured our president, Matthew, might be at work. As expected, I got through to Matthew and explained the day's events. Therefore, I don't see any improvement in their attitude. I'm thinking of ending our business with them, I told him. Matthew agreed, trusting my judgment. He's always had faith in me, a middle school graduate who continued to improve skills and work diligently. He trusted my decision in this matter too, and I thanked him before hanging up. It wasn't just me who was troubled by Jack's unreasonable demands. Our sales team was often looked down upon and faced rude remarks and troublesome requests from him. Even if we stop dealing with such a troublesome company, we can still get requests from other companies. In fact, not having our time consumed unnecessarily might even improve efficiency, as I previously discussed with Matthew. After the call, I looked back at Jack, still arguing with his wife. The atmosphere around had turned sour as everyone seemed fed up with the situation. I decided to let Jack know one last thing during a break in their argument. I've got approval from Matthew to end our dealings. Your company will be notified soon. Jack, in disbelief, confronted me. There's no proof of anything I said today. I'll stop this from happening, saying you lied. He raged. As Jack carried on, I was almost at my wit's end. I thought there was no evidence, but then Mike approached. Too bad, Jack. I recorded everything you said and did. Mike showed his cell phone screen, which displayed Jack pushing me. I had thought Mike was just playing with his phone out of disgust for Jack, but he had been recording the whole time. Jack used to make fun of me too, back in the day. Consider this payback, Mike said. Indeed, Mike, disliked by Jack for being friends with me, had also suffered from Jack's harassment as a result. Mike, coming from a single-parent home and making his own lunches, couldn't just ignore my situation. Jack, increasingly infuriated by the composed Mike, raised his voice. How long are you going to hold on to something from our school days? To Jack, seemingly wanting to let bygones be bygones, Mike angrily retorted. Just because we're adults now doesn't mean the grudges from our school days are gone. Plus, you haven't changed at all, have you? Realizing he had no comeback, Jack seemed to accept defeat. He slumped to his knees, collapsing on the spot. Jack's wife continued to berate him relentlessly. Seeing this, I spoke to Mike about leaving the scene together. This is all the consequence of what you've done so far, Jack. You'd better reflect on it, I told him. Whether Jack heard me or not, he slumped further, adopting a pose as if clinging to the floor. His followers, disillusioned by his behavior, drifted away, leaving only Jack and his furious wife behind. Later, I attached the video Mike had sent me and contacted Jack's company to terminate the deal. The next day, someone higher up than Tyler from Jack's company came to apologize. Pale-faced, they kept begging us to continue the business. He was originally a problematic employee. We've decided to let him go after this incident. We'll change the representative, of course, and we hope to continue our business with you. It turned out everything Tyler had said was true, and discussions about Jack's dismissal had been ongoing. His unreasonable demands seemed to have been his own amusement. We agreed to continue business with a new representative who promised no more unreasonable demands and payment of additional fees. Afterward, Jack was abandoned by his wife, leading to a divorce. Coming home late and barely involved with his child, Jack didn't stand a chance of getting custody and ended up single again. Despite having to pay alimony and child support, Jack also lost his job. For someone who bragged so much about his success, he hit rock bottom all at once. Even his family, upon learning of his situation, told him to solve his problems himself, effectively disowning him. So, Jack was left unable to rely on his family. Now, he's working part-time at a convenience store to make ends meet. Working at a regular company would probably be better, but Jack's previous company was a major corporation. In interviews, abruptly leaving such a prestigious company raised suspicions, making it difficult for him to get hired. His situation became gossip among our classmates, mocked for his former arrogance. After Jack was fired, I first thanked Mike for recording the evidence. Then, Mike, looking a bit embarrassed, said to me, "You know, I've always admired you, George. No matter how much you were bullied, you never gave in." For Mike, my attitude had always been something he aspired to. To me, Mike, who had stayed by my side, seemed more remarkable, but we laughed it off as mutual admiration. Since then, Mike and I have been as close as we were in middle school, even going out for drinks. Mike's belief that school grudges don't just disappear over time proved true. He looked relieved, having finally gotten back at Jack. I agreed, and we enjoyed our drinks. Work-wise, changing the representative from Jack to someone else led to fair pricing and increased profits. Our sales team, too, is relieved and happy, thanking me for taking a firm stand and freeing them from stress. The president, seeing the situation, seems to have gained even more trust in me. It looks like he's even considering promoting me, which has really motivated me to put even more effort into my work. My father, in good health, smiles at my progress. I plan to keep supporting him and continue working hard, staying true to myself.